Welcome to American Cannabis, hosted by our sponsor, Cannabis Tech. I'm your host, Ellis Smith. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Today we will be speaking with Dr. Peshkovsky from Industrial Sonomechanics about nano emulsifications and ultrasonic extraction. Dr. Peshkovsky, thank you for tuning in today. How are you doing?
Very good. Very good. Thanks for having me.
So this is a very exciting topic. I don't know a whole lot about ultrasonic extraction and nano emulsification, so I'm excited to explore this topic today with you and our audience. And so I want to give a little brief background here on Alexei before we get started. Alexei is the co-founder and president of Industrial Sonomechanics and really handles the direction and focus of where the company is going. He has a BA in chemistry from the University of Pennsylvania, has a PhD in physical chemistry from Columbia University. He has 15 years of experience as a manager, investigator, and product developer in both academic and industrial sectors, mainly focusing on industrial instrumentation design and applications development. And has written over 30 scientific papers, patents, presentations, as well as 2 books. So welcome. Thanks for tuning in today. If you could, Alexei, please give us an overview of industrial sonomechanics and its core technology and main applications.
Sure. Industrial sonomechanics was organized about 12 years ago by my father, Sergei Peshkovsky, and myself to commercialize the invention of what we call the barbell horn ultrasonic technology. This technology was created by my father, who was an ultrasound physicist essentially all his life in the Soviet Union. And we patented it and commercialized in 2004, with the company forming in 2006. What this technology does is it allows you to take a lab scale ultrasonic experiment, which is conducted at a high ultrasonic amplitude. The amplitude is the displacement of the tip of the horn. That relates directly to the intensity of ultrasound that is produced in the liquid. I'll play this video again. So what we can do with barbell horn ultrasonic technology is take that, increase the size of the horn, making it industrial, and retain the same high amplitude. This is essential for scaling up, and this is something that hasn't been possible before this technology was introduced. With this, one can simply take any lab scale experiment, of which there are many published, and take it straight to the industrial scale. The high amplitude produced by the horn in the liquid creates what's called acoustic cavitation. This is that white cloud you see under the tip of the horn and above the horn. This cloud is a very high shear field. It is composed of imploding vacuum bubbles that create microjets that hit particles and break them up. So what this technology is particularly good for is making nanoparticles. We offer ultrasonic processors, such as the one that was just displayed, that are used in a wide variety of applications, from pharmaceutical to biofuels to beverages, cosmetic. We worked with petroleum companies for a while. This is the set of industries that we service, but we try to mainly focus on the pharmaceutical, beverage, and cosmetic industries. What we offer are these types of processors. This is a typical bench scale, so medium scale ultrasonic processor that we offer. And the way that it functions is outlined in this schematic, where the liquid goes into this storage tank on the right. It could be a large amount of liquid for a large processor. It is pumped from the bottom of the tank into the reactor chamber, which is this part right in the middle, a flow cell, with the barbell horn that's inserted into it, where you create a very high cavitation intensity. That's where the process occurs. Then it's pumped back into the tank and is recirculated continuously until the process is finished. The horn, the barbell horn, is driven by a transducer that's right above it. And transducer is driven by the ultrasonic generator, which conditions the electrical signal and gives us control over the process. Yeah. So this is about the summary.
How did you realize there's an opportunity for your technology to be used in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, so our equipment is mainly designed for the pharmaceutical industry. And this is because it's particularly good at making nanoparticles. The pharmaceutical industry suffers from an important issue, problem. They, most of the time, need to deliver a hydrophobic or water-hating substance, active pharmaceutical ingredient, to a bloodstream, the bloodstream being mostly water. So it's problematic to deliver an oil-type material that doesn't dissolve in water into essentially water. They used to do this up to about 20, maybe 15 years ago, about 15 years ago. They used to do it by a process called microemulsification. For that process, what you do is you supply an enormous amount of surfactants, which are basically types of soap, to the water, making it very loaded with these soapy molecules, which essentially solubilize oil-based substances into themselves. And in that way, kind of make them water compatible, water soluble, if you will. Then they can be administered into the bloodstream by injection or in some other way, and they stay dispersed through the bloodstream. And then they can travel with it and get delivered to the appropriate organs. The problem with this approach is that there is a tremendous amount of surface-active materials, soaps. And this is not something you want in your bloodstream. But there was just no other way to do it. Then about 15 years ago, the concept of nanoemulsions came into play, where instead of relying on the chemistry of the surfactants, you instead apply mechanical shear. So instead of waiting for the surfactants chemically to break up the oil into tiny droplets, you simply break them up by physical force, which means in the end product, there's a lot less of any foreign chemicals. There still needs to be some surfactant, but first of all, they can be milder. The choice, the options for what surfactants you can use for that is incredibly broad, much, much broader than with microemulsions. So you can always choose very mild and natural or biocompatible surfactants. And their amount is much lower. And this is essentially what our equipment is designed for making nanoemulsions, in some cases where the active pharmaceutical ingredient doesn't dissolve in anything, and there are situations like that. It won't dissolve in any type of solvent or oil. In that case, we provide equipment to make nanocrystals. So you just take the material in the crystalline form and break them up into nanoparticles, deliver them that way. Nanoemulsions, I would say. Yep. Sure.
I'd like to real quick. I don't mean to interrupt. I had a question real quick on. Someone was asking if your technology requires surfactants or not, with the way your system is set up, and that was a question that just came in.
Yeah. Yes, it does, but a lot less than microemulsification. And as I said, the choice of surfactants is much broader, so they can be much milder, very biocompatible, generally regarded as safe, even natural in many cases. But yes, there is some amount that's always required. In general, to make nanoemulsions, the amount of surfactant will be less than the amount of oil that you're putting in, even to make translucent nanoemulsions. We'll get to those in a few minutes. With microemulsions, you need 5 to 10 times more surfactant than the oil that you're emulsifying. So it's a big difference. And the choice is limited to very strong ones. So, yeah, and going forward, feel free to interrupt me anytime with questions. I much prefer to answer questions right away.
Well, we've got quite a few coming in. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to continue, but sure. Is there another question?
I've got a handful that are coming, being flooded, so I'd like to see if we can get to some of these. So someone says here that they are working with one of your machines to emulsify cannabinoids. How could we encapsulate the finished liquid so it is stable in the capsule? So far, all attempts have melted the cap.
I see. I think this question is better left for later because some of it will be answered during the talk.
Okay,
but I will address it, sure. Coming back, so most of the time our equipment was used for making nanoemulsions. Nanocrystals is not as frequent for the pharmaceutical industry. But then about 2 years ago, the cannabis industry just exploded with the exact same need. There's a hydrophobic, water-incompatible, oily substance, which is cannabis extract. Could be THC, CBD, whatever, CBD isolate. It's solid, but it's a type of oil anyway. It's just solid. It's an oil-soluble substance. So the same need to deliver that substance to the water-based bloodstream. And it just happened that we were ready with the equipment. It was designed for this exact purpose. So if 2 years ago we almost did nothing with the cannabis industry, for the past 2 years, and especially for the past year, I would say it's about 80%, maybe more at this point, of what we do.
Wow, so that's really become a major part of your business, it sounds like.
Yeah, we got lucky.
Well, that's pretty exciting. I have a question here from a gentleman. Do you recommend a dual-phase systems like lecithin or a I can pronounce it, solubilizer?
Solubilizer is something that's used in the microemulsification process. It's a term where you use a surfactant and a lot of it and make oils kind of solubilized in the water phase. I don't recommend doing that if making a nanoemulsion is an option. And that's because the amount of surfactant, again, would be much higher if you solubilize with it. And the choice is limited to very harsh ones. Now, what was the question? Phospholipids? Lecithin?
Yes, exactly.
Part of the question? Yeah, lecithin is a good surfactant. It's natural. It's very effective. The only issue with it is that lecithins used directly will most of the time form liposomes, not nanoemulsions, and that's a different system. Liposomes are not meant to incorporate oils. They incorporate water-soluble substances in their core. They have an oily dual layer, sort of a bilayer of phospholipids, for example, coming from lecithin, and then water also on the outside. You could incorporate some oil into their bilayer, into the skin of it, but the loading factor is much lower. So lecithin is great, but you just need to be careful about what type of phospholipids it contains, and it may need to be combined with a different surfactant. But as part of the formulation, it's a non-toxic, very effective surfactant. Okay.
Here's another question. How does the crystallization process work with this equipment?
Nanoemulsification, you probably mean. How to make nanoemulsions.
Yes.
Yeah. So nanoemulsions, and it's good timing because we just talked about liposomes. So the difference between liposomes and nanoemulsions. I don't have a slide on liposomes, but I can talk about the difference. And This is a slide showing very roughly the schematic of nanoemulsions. So how to make nanoemulsions, or how to make cannabinoids water-soluble or water-compatible. I try not to use the word water-soluble because I'm trained as a chemist, and so rigorously that wouldn't be correct. Although it is very close to being correct for most intents and purposes. Nanoemulsions, especially translucent nanoemulsions, look like a solution. They behave very close to a solution. So perhaps water-soluble is not entirely wrong, but it's, if you're going to be very rigorous, it's a colloidal suspension. It's not a solution. Solution would be when something breaks down to individual molecules. These are very small droplets, but still not individual molecules. So a nanoemulsion looks like this. It has water as a continuous phase on the outside. It has oil, which is these yellow drops, as a dispersed phase. And if you look at each droplet, it has this surfactant covering its surface. Now, surfactant is a type of agent that is hydrophobic on one end. Hydrophobic is water-hating or oil-loving, lipophilic sometimes it's also called. And that's represented by this little tail that's sticking into the yellow interior of the droplet. So this part likes the oil, and it dissolves in oil. The other side, the head of the surfactant, is this oval, kind of dark blue looking, kind of like a little oval that surrounds the entire surface of the droplet. So these are water-loving or hydrophilic, and they're in contact with the water. So to water, the droplet looks like a perfectly welcome entity. It has water-loving surface. To the oil, looking at the droplet from the inside, it looks like a perfectly oil-compatible substance, having these tails, which are oil-loving. So essentially, everybody's happy. And this emulsion is suspended in, these droplets can be suspended in the water. And if they're correctly made with correct surfactants, these droplets will be small enough. And if they're made with the right equipment, with very high shear equipment, these droplets can be made very small and stable, meaning they will not combine, they will not coalesce, they will not float upwards or downwards, they will not cream. And that's because if they're small enough, the Brownian motion that they undergo just naturally supersedes any kind of systematic vertical motion, any kind of separation. Their buoyancy is very, very low when they're very small. So any desire to float is reduced, and the desire to bounce around by just Brownian motion is increased. So it's kind of like a self-stirring system. So these can be completely stable. In order to make that, what you need is an ultrasonic processor. This is our bench scale processor. A schematic of it, similar to the schematic I showed before. And you need a small amount of, well, you need some surfactant. This is a product that we offer. It's called Nano Stabilizer. The slide still says stabilizer package, but we changed the name. Now we call it Nano Stabilizer, and we've got a trademark on it. So we're trying to get used to the new way of saying it. So Nano Stabilizer, it contains the entire formulation that is necessary to make nanoemulsions, specifically carrier oils, emulsifiers, antioxidant to protect cannabinoids from oxidation, and some basic preservatives to resist fungus and bacteria.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
some benefits.
couple of more slides. I'm sorry, I thought I was finished.
Go ahead.
But no. So once the nanoemulsion is made, this is how it can be used. So this video shows 20 milligrams per milliliter CBD nanoemulsion. It's translucent if you look at the dropper bottle. It's not transparent, but once you dose it into the water, it disappears. Just give it a quick stir, And now it looks like a solution. So the bottle on the left has pure water, the bottle with 20 milligrams of CBD on the right has the dose in it. They are both equally transparent. And this will be stable, will not separate ever. The only thing that one does need to worry about is light. Light, and this has nothing to do with nanoemulsions or anything like that. Light is just something that degrades most cannabinoids. So it's better if this bottle isn't transparent but of some dark material, UV resistant specifically.
Okay, so we want to make sure that any type of holding container for it is not translucent so that we can ensure that the cannabinoids are not degraded any way possible. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly, yeah, it's better. So this is for demonstration purposes just to show, but many products out there have these clear bottles, CBD water with clear bottles. That's probably a mistake.
Interesting. You see this, actually, I see it all over, and it makes no one's really paying attention. That's interesting. In what ways can water-soluble cannabis extracts be administered?
Let me skip forward to that a little bit.
Well, if you want, I can back up a little bit. We can touch on some of the
It's probably reasonable to mention what the benefits of these nanoemulsions are if we talked about how to make them.
Sure.
Yeah. So, obviously, convenience is a huge benefit. It can just be added to water and dissolves in it, so you can infuse it into most beverages and administer them that way. Just drink them. But beyond convenience, probably the most important aspect is this. So this is a study done with a completely different substance. This is a pharmaceutical study. But it does show the benefit of this type of delivery method of nanoemulsions versus regular emulsions for pretty much any type of active, because the benefit belongs to the delivery vehicle more than to the substance itself. So if you look at this graph, the bottom is a conventional emulsion, so a very rough, coarse emulsion of an active substance. And you can see that the bioavailability is pretty low. Vertical is the plasma concentration of whatever this active is. Now, once you make a submicron emulsion, so we're talking several hundreds of nanometer size nanoemulsion, the bioavailability goes up. And once you go to a nanoemulsion, this particular one, I think, had something like 170 nanometer droplet size, which is not by any means the smallest you can go, but it does show that you get this shift to earlier onset of action, and the bioavailability, the plasma concentration, increases. Now, this trend is expected to continue if you keep making the droplets smaller. We are currently participating in a study on that. We don't have any results yet, but I hope to have them soon. This is what happens to nanoemulsions as you make the droplets smaller. So on the left is a nanoemulsion similar to the one that already showed benefits at the in the previous slide. But on this slide, this is the biggest droplet. So it's milky and white. That's what nanoemulsions look like until droplets, until their droplets become smaller than 100 nanometers in diameter. So you can see that as it goes right, as it gets smaller, and this is the same exact concentration of oil. We just deliberately under-processed and then processed a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. So when you get to 31 nanometers, it becomes close to transparent. Nanoemulsions made with our Nano Stabilizer, that jar I showed before, and our equipment, can get down to this situation. This is a CBD natural full spectrum extract nanoemulsion, and you can see that the mean droplet size is about 18, I think it was, or it's below 20 nanometers. So this is very highly translucent, completely transparent when added to a bulk of water, and is very effective. So I could mention a little bit about why translucency is important beyond convenience.
Sure. Okay.
So first of all, again, you can just add it to a beverage and it disappears. So that's very convenient. But perhaps more importantly is this. This trend is expected to continue. And so our translucency is just a side effect of making smaller droplets. And making smaller droplets is good because the onset of action is expected to become shorter and the bioavailability is expected to increase.
Then in what ways can this water-soluble cannabis extracts be administered? I think now we can get to that question.
Sure, yeah. So the easiest is just to drink it. I would say if that's an option, then just making a beverage, and it could be pretty much any water-based beverage that you would like it to be, including hot beverages, coffee, tea, whatever, or cold, iced coffee too, iced tea. So the easiest is to drink it. This is the kind of natural and intended by nature way of bringing nutrients into your body. But it could also be a sublingual tincture. In that way, it will probably act faster. Not probably, it will definitely act faster. The issue with that is it's difficult to prescribe a dose because everybody swallows differently and everybody salivates differently. So you think it's under your tongue, but really it's being washed down and becoming more of a digestive absorption. So it's hard if the bioavailability of oral, of digestive absorption is low and sublingual is high, such as the case with some alcohol-based tinctures. That could be a problem because you don't know how much you swallowed and you change the bioavailability for that portion. Therefore, you don't really know the dose in the end. With nanoemulsions, it's not as big of an issue because the bioavailability is high in both cases. So just because you shifted absorption from under your tongue to your small intestine, the difference is smaller. So it's still prescribable. It could be made into a nasal spray. That's very fast. Very quick way into the bloodstream, except, again, some of it will go through and get swallowed. It could even be nebulized to the lungs. You can't vape nanoemulsions. You can't vape anything water-based. But you could nebulize them to the lungs. One thing to do there is to make sure that surfactants, any surfactants that you used, are compatible with the lung surfactant. Otherwise, there could be some irritation. And they could be made into topicals and creams, or pretty much anything that had a water base to it. Also edibles. For example, when you make a brownie, there is water participating in the process, so you could dilute the nanoemulsion into that and then use it, and the brownie will be baked. Most of the water will evaporate, but probably not all of it. And so once it's swallowed, most of the nanoemulsion can be reconstituted in your gastric fluids and act similarly to a beverage.
Alexis, I'm not sure if you heard my question.
No, I didn't hear that.
Could this technology allow for intravenous use, IVs, and this type of stuff to enter the bloodstream quicker and faster?
Sure. Yeah, as long as the surfactants are biocompatible with the bloodstream, which really they should be, intravenous injection would be the quickest and the most complete. By definition, it would be 100% bioavailable and would be very quick. And this is exactly what the pharma companies always try to do. It's not always the most convenient way for the patient. I would prefer to drink it than to be injected with it. But for medical situations, for emergencies, sure, yes. It could be fed as an IV. Yeah.
Okay. Why is there an increase in the bioavailability, and why does it act faster?
Yeah, so this is a central question to nanoemulsions. It deserves some attention. If you swallow a capsule with oil, or consume an edible that had oil, let's say butter with the cannabis and the brownie that was made with that butter, or in some other way delivered oil in bulk, not as an emulsion, not as a nanoemulsion, into your stomach. From your stomach, it will be emptied into your small intestine, and there it needs to be absorbed into the intestinal walls through the absorptive cells. Now, in order to get to the absorption site, the oil needs to cross what's called unstirred aqueous layer. And in order to do that, it needs to be made water compatible in some way. So the body's natural way of doing it is, if you look at these large oil droplets on the upper left, this is, let's say, the oil that was consumed in a capsule. They cannot get to the absorption site. And even if they could, they wouldn't be absorbed. They're too large. What your body does to it, it tries to digest it. So if there are any triglycerides, vegetable oils, which there should be for pretty much any formulation, this is the function of carrier oil, they will get digested, and your body will release free fatty acids from them. Now, these free fatty acids, in conjunction with bile salts produced by the gallbladder and some naturally present phospholipids, will take any non-digestible oils, such as cannabis oils that were contained in the formulation, oils that cannot make free fatty acids because they're not triglycerides. And it will try to kind of break them off from the bulk chemically, very similarly to how it's done in the microemulsion situation, and encapsulate them, sort of cover them by their hydrophobic tails. So these are naturally present surfactants, including free fatty acids that you just made from triglycerides. These are surfactant-acting molecules, and they will try to make small droplets of the active material, oil, and make what's called mixed micelles. So you can see that first you make this coarse emulsion from the large drops, and then from that you make what's called mixed micelles. Mixed micelles are about the size distribution of mixed micelles. Is about this. It's about 20 nanometers in diameter, and the process is very slow. It's a chemically driven process. The only shear is just some basic vibration and peristaltics of the small intestine. So very slowly, mixed micelles are made. Then they can cross the unstirred aqueous layer, get to the surface of the absorptive cells, get into the cells, and then they can go in two directions. They can go into the lymph, and that happens if chylomicrons are present in the cells, which happens if you ate a fatty meal prior to the administration. And if you didn't eat a fatty meal, then they will actually not be absorbed at all, mostly, because you won't have triglycerides to make free fatty acids, to make mixed micelles. But if you somehow did have, maybe you didn't eat a lot, but you had enough to make some mixed micelles, but not enough to make chylomicrons in the cells, then they will be directed after absorption into the bloodstream and to the liver. So the issue with this is making mixed micelles is a very slow process, and anybody who ever consumed an edible with THC knows how it feels. In the beginning, there's nothing. For about an hour, there's nothing. Hour and a half, maybe something. At 2 hours, it's coming in. And then it's going to keep coming in for another couple hours. And the maximum is at 4. And that's because some micelles already got into your bloodstream. Others are still being made. And so it's not a steady state. It's not a flat sort of profile, which is pretty inconvenient. It's constantly changing. It's hard to kind of park yourself at a certain level. So for medical administration, this is a serious problem because everything will depend on triglycerides, how much you ate prior to that, how much you ate during that, what your digestion is like. Everybody's different. And also, it's a competition between natural elimination of whatever you ate through your intestine and out, and absorption. So the bioavailability is very low and unpredictable. So it's hard to really prescribe a dose, and the doses are very high. They have to be high so that you can get at least something in. Now, the reason that nanoemulsions are so much quicker acting and more bioavailable, and on top of that are flat in their profile, is because this distribution, I showed the distribution a little bit earlier. This is actually the distribution for nanoemulsions, droplets that are made with our equipment and Nano Stabilizer. So when the substance arrives in the small intestine, it's in the form of something very similar to these mixed micelles. You don't have to make them. They are prepared to travel through the unstirred aqueous layer right away and get absorbed. And now, if you have chylomicrons, it will go into the lymph. If you don't, it will go into the bloodstream. But it will all more or less go in together. So it's not like you're building the concentration very slowly, going up and up and up for a long time. They will do this faster and much more completely, so the dose can be prescribed, and the absorption is much more independent of your environment, whatever else you ate, and things like that.
Okay. Alexei, before we move on to the next topic of extraction, I've got quite a bit of questions here. There's no way I'm going to be able to hit all of them, so I'm going to just select a few here that we can try to hit on, answer some of these questions for our audience, if that's okay with you.
Sure. First
question is, what is generally the amplitude of the barbell horns? What is the lifetime of them?
We recommend operating at about 90 microns peak to peak. They can go well above 100. Our large systems go up to, I think, 115 microns. But normally that's a bit too much. Nanoemulsions are formed pretty well at between 80 and about 90, 95 microns peak to peak.
Okay. Here's another question. What is the size of the particles in your emulsions, and how was this measured? DLS or CRI-TEM?
Yeah, so this is convenient. This is a slide that I have open right now.
Perfect.
About 20 to 40 nanometers is normally where you end up, depending on your raw materials. And this is when it's made with our Nano Stabilizer. Obviously, if you use your own formulation, then it could be something else. It depends on what you're using. And this particular graph was DLS, dynamic light scattering. Static light scattering or laser diffraction is another good method, although it gets a little flaky when you go below 100 nanometers. Well, I shouldn't say a little flaky. It's just not. It's not the best technique for very small droplets. Dynamic light scattering is appropriate for below 100 nanometers, so this is how this was measured.
Okay. See if I can pull out a few more here for us. That here's the one that's saying they're currently using polysorbate 80 in their emulsions and with one of your machines, and it's working great. Just one good one to use.
I heard the first part of the question. What was the second half?
Okay, so they're using polysorbate 80 in emulsions machines, and it's working great. I was just wondering if it's a good one to use for this business.
Polysorbate 80 is a good surfactant, but it's a bit harsh. It's grass, generally regarded as safe. You can have it in your formulations, and they would be food grade, but it's bitter, and it's very synthetic. So, if you're okay with that, then it's a good surfactant. As far as making small droplets, it's very effective. Yes.
Okay. Let's do one more here, and we will move on to our extraction. How is this technology used to avoid mask off flavors or bitters for that matter?
I heard about half of the question. How is this technology able to mask flavors? I think the question was?
Yeah, either avoid or mask off flavors.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's a very good question, very common question.
Okay.
This technology is not able to remove flavors that are already there. So the Nano Stabilizer that we offer is tasteless. You could even taste it directly, although that would be a huge dose compared to what it would normally be as part of the nanoemulsion. But even then, it won't be bitter, or it practically won't have any taste. The sonication also doesn't create any taste. However, if your starting material has a taste, this taste will be enhanced because everything is enhanced. It's the bioavailability question. The bioavailability is increased because droplets are small. The bioavailability of whatever has the taste will also be increased. So if your starting extract is bitter, the nanoemulsion will be bitter. If your starting material is an isolate and you put it on your tongue and you don't taste anything, that doesn't mean it doesn't have any taste. That just means it's not bioavailable to your taste buds. It doesn't dissolve in water. So when you nanoemulsify it, there may be some bitterness to it, depending on how clean your starting material is. For very clean distillates and very clean isolate, there's practically no taste. We have a few customers that manage to have very low taste, but it's difficult to get your starting material that clean. There is a way to mask it by introducing competing flavors, but this is not something that we are specialists in, and there are plenty of food scientists that can help you with that, but we don't include any masking agents in our formulations in order to give people the ability to essentially choose what they want to do with it.
Okay. Let's move on to extraction and really discuss, what is the physical principle of ultrasonic extraction, and what is it? This is very new to me. I have, I'm very, very curious to learn more about this.
Sure. So to talk about extraction, we first have to talk about cavitation a little bit more in depth. So this is, again, the cavitation cloud, and it consists of these small vacuum bubbles that are formed, grow, and at some point turn around and collapse. They have nothing inside vacuum, so they implode into nothing. But they do so asymmetrically if there is any kind of disturbance in the liquid. So if you have an oil droplet, or if you have a cell, a plant cell, or anything, the implosion will not happen symmetrically. One wall will pierce the other wall of the droplet, and that will create what's called a microjet. Microjets are very potent, very small scale, very fast. So for extraction, for nanoemulsification, they simply hit a droplet of oil and break it up in smaller droplets. Now for extraction, a similar thing happens. It can hit a cell and break it open, and the cell can then release its contents. So ultrasonic extraction is a fairly common process, and it's used for solvent extraction of all different kinds of things in food industry and other industries as well. But in the case of cannabis extraction, there are two things that are becoming somewhat popular. One is cryogenic ethanol extraction. So ethanol, when it's warm, is able to extract very quickly and efficiently, but that co-extracts unwanted things. It co-extracts some waxes and chlorophyll, and then everything needs to be winterized. So a new thing is to extract with cryogenic ethanol, which is essentially already at winterization conditions, and so it leaves the waxes and chlorophyll behind. It's a good solvent for extraction. But it's slower. When it's cold, it's not as aggressive. So we have some people using our systems to extract with cold ethanol, reporting good results, preliminary results. Another thing you could do easily is an equivalent of bubble hash. Basically, break off the trichomes. It's not exactly extraction, but it could be a step in the starting step in the extraction process. Trichomes can be broken off mechanically, but with ultrasound, it's more efficient. So ice water and the flour material break off trichomes and then filter, collect them. But all of it is essentially taken forward by ultrasonic cavitation, which is basically mechanical shear, very high mechanical shear.
What potential advantage does this offer compared to other extraction methods?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it accelerates the extraction process by introducing very high shear, but that's not always necessary. There are many solvents that extract quickly. There are some extraction systems that are very good. They work very well. But so accelerating the existing extraction is a minor advantage. But there is one potential advantage that is not minor, that is potentially very, very important. And we're working on it right now. This is, now that we have the nanoemulsification process all pretty much figured out and offered off the shelf, we're now directing most of our efforts to this novel extraction method. And that's just by using water. So water is obviously not a good solvent for cannabis, for cannabinoids, because they don't dissolve in water. So it can't be used as a solvent instead of ethanol or hydrocarbon, for example, or CO2. But as I demonstrated before, we're able to make cannabinoids believe that water is a good environment for them. So nanoemulsions, they're not rigorously speaking solutions, but they behave like solutions. So by similar principle, we seem to be able to, and this is preliminary data, and the data is looking very good, we're able to extract the cannabis oils into water with some amount of surfactant. And then the thing that we have to really work out is, once you have the emulsion, how do you get cannabinoids out? So we have an inverse problem. The nanoemulsions that are made are very stable. They're very high quality nanoemulsions, and it's very difficult to break them. It's possible to break them by extensive centrifugation, but that's impractical. So what we're working on now is how to essentially separate the oil from the water in separate layers, which would happen if we didn't have such a stable nanoemulsion. Once that works out, hopefully the oil will just float to the top, and then we'll be able to drain the water and collect the oil. This will be a very advantageous method because you would not need any harsh solvents. There's nothing flammable. There's some surfactant, but it could be very biocompatible. So potentially, if this works out, I believe this would be a significant improvement for the industry.
Is there a pH that water would need to be at when you do this process?
It's unclear right now. To extract, it doesn't really matter for the surfactants that we're using. We try to stay with non-ionic surfactants for now. So pH doesn't really affect the process. On the other hand, we're just starting. So we'll explore everything, including pH.
Okay. So, this is, you mentioned early on that about 80% of your business now is in the cannabis space. That's pretty exciting. What current products do you offer to the cannabis sector, and where can we see it being used?
Sure. So at this point, it's basically very simple. We offer ultrasonic processors. This is a schematic of our medium scale, bench scale ultrasonic processor. We call it the BSP 1200. We have a smaller processor for roughly slightly bigger than lab scale. We don't offer really small lab scale processors. Those are available from pretty much any ultrasonic company. But we offer everything that's scaled up from there. So our smaller processor is the LSP 500, and that's good for maybe a liter of nanoemulsion at a time, broken up into 200 milliliter batches, or it could be used in the flow mode like this, and then you can process about a liter, but it's not a production system. It's a R&D system. This BSP 1200 system is a production system. You can make anywhere from 5 to 10 liters of nanoemulsion per hour. And just to give you a sense of perspective, 10 liters at 20 milligrams per milliliter is 20,000 doses that could be made per hour. The concentration doesn't have to stop there. It's still translucent and very effective up to about 50 milligrams per milliliter. So 10 liters can become 50,000 doses. I would say it's the upper productivity limit for the system. And then we have a larger system, the ISP 3000, which is about 4 to 5 times larger and faster than the BSP. And in conjunction with it, we offer the Nano Stabilizer. Again, this slide still says stabilizer package, but we now call it the Nano Stabilizer. And this is the entire formulation that's required for nanoemulsification. Or you could develop your own formulation, and then just the ultrasonic system will be all you need from us. For the extraction, we don't offer an off-the-shelf solution yet. For the water extraction, we're working on it, but when we are finished with it, we're hoping to be able to offer the same type of combination. It would be an ultrasonic system and some substance that helps you extract into water, and perhaps if post-processing is necessary, then we'll offer whatever's needed for that. So as far as the off-the-shelf solution for nanoemulsification, it's a system and Nano Stabilizer, and for extraction, just the system at this point.
In order to run your technology, do you need to be a chemist to use your products at all, or can someone like myself who does not have a science background be able to be trained on your standard operating procedures and use your technology?
Sure. This is a common question, and I have a perfect slide for that. It speaks for itself. You do not have to be you don't have to be a crazy scientist to nanoemulsify with our technology. We provide everything that you need for the formulation and for the shear equipment, and it comes with instructions. They're as simple as a simple recipe. Basically, take this, put it in here, stir, add to the main tank, recirculate, turn on ultrasound, watch for translucency when translucency is what it's supposed to be, stop, filter, and collect. As simple as that. So you do not have to be a scientist. You just need some very basic lab space and some basic common sense. If you develop your own formulations or use your own formulations, then you need to be probably a chemist or a similar type of scientist to be able to develop formulations. It doesn't have to be necessarily a chemist. Someone could just learn how to develop formulations to some extent, but more scientific background is then required. The same for extractions at this point until we figure out an off-the-shelf solution that will come with instructions.
But that is coming.
Yeah, hopefully it's coming soon. I don't know how soon, but we're working on it.
All right. Okay, that's great. And so, what states are you working in? Where can the products be seen? And are you going to be at any upcoming trade shows? How can the public reach out to you?
Sure. As far as what states we're working in, the company is located in New York, and we're opening another facility in Florida, in Miami, probably within the next year. We don't work with cannabis or make nanoemulsions ourselves, so we don't have any issues with state borders or country borders. Our equipment is sold all over the world. The Nano Stabilizer is also all just food-grade materials that can be shipped anywhere, so there are absolutely no limitations. And we do present at trade shows. We recently came back from the World Medical Conference in Pittsburgh a few weeks ago. We are going to be at Cannabis World Congress at the Javits Center in New York on May 30th, going to June 2nd. I will be giving a lecture at Marijuana for Medical Professionals conference in Denver. I think it's in October, mid-October this year. Beyond that, I'm not sure yet, but we probably will be on the West Coast somewhere later in the year.
You're right. Getting it. That's great. And you're saying we could hope to see some new technology coming out soon from you guys, which is even more exciting. Anything else you want to touch on today here? We've got a few more minutes. We're going to wrap up. I've got literally a handful of questions. If you want to go through them, they're touching on different parts of your talk today. So if you want to take a few minutes to go back and kind of maybe answer a few more of these questions, let me know, and we can kind of extend this today to go over if you're okay with that.
Oh, I'm happy to. And I think we left one question for later. I guess now is later, but I forgot what the question was.
Oh, Lord, so I can go back and find that. Here's a question that I've had pop up a few times. Please discuss liposomes versus nanoemulsions, if you could.
Sure. Liposomes are generally meant to encapsulate water-soluble materials. They have an aqueous or water-based interior, not oil-based interior. They have a lipid bilayer skin and water on the outside. So water is both on the inside and the outside of these. So if you wanted to encapsulate and deliver, let's say, vitamin C, you could put it in water, make liposomes encapsulate that vitamin C inside the liposome, and then deliver it that way, and that would control the release of vitamin C. It would slow it down. So it's in solution, but that solution is inside a controlled particle. You could incorporate some oil-based substance into the bilayer, into the skin of a liposome, but the loading factor would be lower. There's just a lot more space inside the liposome than in the thin bilayer. Nanoemulsions have oil on the inside and water on the outside. So if what you're trying to do is deliver an oil-based substance, it's best to put it in a nanoemulsion, thereby occupying the interior, and deliver them that way.
Okay, perfect. Here's another question on nano-emulsifications. What are the frequencies used for nano-emulsifications?
Our equipment works at 20 kilohertz, 20,000 hertz. The lower the frequency, the easier it is to make large-scale equipment. There are many reasons, mathematical reasons for that. But long story short, we try to operate at as low a frequency as possible, but it has to stay above human hearing. So 20 kilohertz is about the upper edge of human hearing, and that's where we operate.
Coming in the SIFT, we can get some of the questions that are important. Is your method better than spray drying? I'm not sure if that's relevant or not.
Spray drying is not a method of making nanoemulsions. It's a completely different thing. Spray drying is used in post-processing sometimes with our nanoemulsions. It's a way of making dry powders. So if someone wanted to make a dry powder, they could take a nanoemulsion, put an encapsulating matrix into it. It would be some sort of a sugar-like substance, whatever works best. Sometimes maltodextrin is used, although I'm not sure that's the right material for nanoemulsions. But some sort of a water-soluble matrix, and then that can be spray dried, thereby replacing the water with the, let's say, sugar. So sugar takes the place of water, and now you have an oil droplet encapsulated in solid sugar versus water. Once that is put back into water, sugar dissolves out and reconstitutes the nanoemulsion back to where it was. This is something that can happen in a beverage or in a gastric juice if you consume that powder directly. But spray drying is more of a following step than rather than an alternative.
Okay. I think I found the question here that we left for the end here, and it's how to place nano-emulsion inside a capsule without melting the cap.
That's a good question. Nanoemulsions are mostly water, and capsules are meant to dissolve in your gastric juices, in your gastric fluids. So they dissolve in water. If you have water on the inside, it will dissolve the capsule from the inside. There are some special capsules that work for certain pH. So nanoemulsions don't really have to have any specific type of pH. They could be neutral, let's say pH 7, and if the capsule doesn't dissolve at that pH, but does dissolve at pH 3, then nanoemulsion won't dissolve it from the inside, but once it's swallowed and hits the gastric fluids with low pH, it will release the nanoemulsion. So that could be one way.
Great answer. Can you give examples of good antioxidants to use?
Sure. Vitamin E is a good antioxidant. Vitamin C, although vitamin C is water soluble, so that could just be in the bulk. Vitamin E is oil soluble, so that could be in the oil phase. Those are the ones that I normally prefer, but there are many out there, many very biocompatible ones, and they all roughly work about the same way.
Okay. Alexa, I think we're going to wrap this up. There's no way I can sift through all these questions. There's just a lot of them that I think we touched on quite a bit of the answers for them, and so I appreciate you getting on today. Is there anything you'd like to add to kind of wrap this up today, if I may have missed anything specific?
Well, no, I appreciate the opportunity to present this. This is new technology. We're very excited about it. We're working to improve it. We're especially excited the possibility of making water-based extraction possible. And I will be happy to update anyone on this. We can be contacted through our website. It's sonomechanics.com. So contact us with any questions. My email is Alexey, A-L-E-X-E-Y, @sonomechanics.com, so you could write to me directly. And yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity.
I want to thank our audience for tuning in today for this great talk. Dr. Alexey Peshkovsky with Industrial Sonomechanics with Nano Emulsification and Ultrasonic Extraction. I'm Ellis Smith, your host. Thank you for tuning in to the American Cannabis, and I'd like to thank our host, Cannabis Tech. Until next month, have a great day. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.